Atapu, namaste. This is Kasakma Keperu with another broadcast for you. And I want to go into how to perform powerful Auset or Isis magic. So this is going to be really interesting and really fun and informative. But the first thing I want to say in leading up to that, to give you an explanation of who is Auset or Isis, who is she? Where does she come from? Well, in the Egyptian mythos or mythology, she is the wife of Osir or Osiris. And in that story, Osiris was king and he ruled over Upper and Lower Egypt. And he was dethroned by his evil brother Set. He was tricked. Set cut his body up into 14 pieces and scattered them out throughout the land. And so Set symbolizes devotion. She also symbolizes the archetype or the grandmother. Okay, mother archetype. So Auset was devoted to go throughout the entire world to get the pieces and put them back together so that Osir can retake the throne. But in the interim, she had an immaculate conception with the Benu bird and gave birth to Haru or Horus, where we get the word hour from, or hero. And Horus, Peru, went to Tahuti, god of wisdom, to learn how to defeat his evil uncle Set and put his father Osir back on the throne. Now, prior to all of that, Auset, when she gave birth, she had to nurture and teach Haru about the world. And if you read the Egyptian hieroglyphics, so you read the text, you'll find that she really bestows a lot of knowledge onto Haru and talks to him about the world and what the world was like. And you get an insight of the culture of Egypt at the time, which is, it's very interesting, you know. But Auset, female energy, represents that devotion, that mother, that wife energy, you know. But more importantly, she represents culture, which is the glue, the adhesive that binds everything together. So years ago, I said this, and I want to go back to this, is because I was attending a lot of lectures by these so-called scholars and intellectuals. And I'm talking like 20 years ago. People think I'm a really young cat, but I'm not. I'm 70 years old, all right? But I just look good. Okay, anyway. So I was attending these lectures by these scholars in the conscious community, in the secular community, you know, and I actually did that for, I think it was like 5 years and dropped out. And the reason being because I made a prediction back then. And, you know, some of the people I listened to was Dr. Ben Jamakanen and Dr. Clark and a lot of other guys. Carl Sagan I followed a lot. And I made this prediction. I said, we are going on the wrong path, meaning that I saw people attending these lectures and getting intellectually stimulated, but it would do nothing to transform their life or to better their lives. And I said that without the Auset component, the component of culture that's translated from mother to children, without the Auset factor, the culture, none of this means anything because people will revert back to their default behavior. And lo and behold, 20 years later, what we're seeing now is the disintegration of the family, the nuclear family unit. The world is in turmoil due to left brain thinking, which tends to separate things, label and define, but it cannot see how things tie back together. Remember I said the greatest problem that we're facing in the Western world is the lack of synthesis thinking, which ties external things that seem unrelated, ties those things together through abstractions. The only thing that we're working with now is a congregative form of thinking, which combines things based on external components. This is why you see people classify white people, black people, Asian people, but they can't look at the abstract notions that maybe we are all consciousness, and maybe there's only one consciousness. So what you do to somebody else, you're actually doing to yourself. This is the great fault that we have not taken into account. And I'm gonna go a little bit more into that because the ancient Egyptians, most ancient cultures, the Mayans, the Chinese, just knew this, which is why if you go into Egypt, as the Egyptologists did and the other like anthropologists, they had a hard time finding a division of subject matters. They couldn't find where Egypt had religion or science, you know, And they were like, well, or music or art, they mixed everything together because why? They had synthesis thinking. They didn't think in terms of differences. Like, for example, they saw water as fluid. Water meaning somebody was emotional. All right, that's how they thought. But if you are, that's the right brain. But if you are a left brain thinker, you will say water separate from emotions, separate from steam, and you will label it, you define it, you'll keep it in separate categories. Just like you go to school, you have different subjects which should be relatable, which should tie each other. This is why we have the separation of church and state, because we cannot reconcile the idea that there is a God, because you cannot see God in the explicit, meaning that there is nothing in the physical world that can prove to you the existence of God. God is in the implicit. Do you understand the difference between the explicit and the implicit? The implicit is stating that when you have bees that are pollinating, and that very out, when you have cows that are defecating, and that manure, what have you, is feeding the soil. On the bees pollinating, it's helping to spread the seeds and stuff. That tells you there's an intelligence at work that is making sure that things that are created, nothing's superfluous, everything has a form and function. Everything that's created is there to sustain the whole. You understand? The mere fact that you have human beings who develop dark skin to protect them from the rays of the sun indicates that there's an intelligence that is having them adapt to the climate, such as white people who go into Caucasus Mountains or colder climates lose the melanin because they don't need the melanin. Okay, and they adapt to that climate. That's an intelligence at work saying, okay, we have to adapt you or change you so that you can survive. The mere fact that you have different races is a survival technique, because if you only have one race, then you're susceptible to a disease wiping that race out. This is why there is a diversification of humanoids or human beings with different hues and different ways of thinking, whether it be left and right brain, so that we can ensure the species survives. This is the intelligence of God at work, of Netter, source. But because Western man only thinks through left brain, he can only think in terms of the explicit. He can't look in the implicit, so he lacks synthesis thinking. He can only think congregatively, where he looks at the external. This is why you'll find in Western culture that they try to steer away from the ideas of the occult, of the metaphysical. They don't believe in it. They only believe in sensory input, what they can feel, hear, see. They only believe in that. But now through the quantum mechanics and string theory, they're starting to really understand at the quantum level, there are things that exist. Meanwhile, the ruling elite, the oligarchy, know that these things are real because they're practicing occult things tucked away, hidden from sight. Read the hidden hand. You'll never see them. But anyway, so my point is this. There are a lot of so-called spiritual teachers on YouTube talking a lot of BS. And I'm sorry to go there. And maybe in the future I'll name names, but I don't want to get into a YouTube battle. But they don't know what they're talking about. Listen, I spent 15 years in priesthood. I actually went through priesthood. I actually went through initiation. And now you have these guys on YouTube claiming to know spirituality and have occult powers, but don't practice Auset, don't practice a culture. They get back into the intellectual thing, and that's a fallacy because, there's one guy who has kids, and he's talking about how I homeschool my kids. Well, if you homeschool your kids on the same educational system that's out there, you're doing nothing. You might as well bring them to the public school system then. You got to teach them how to be integrated brain thinkers. Synthesis, you got to teach them how to do that. If you don't, then you're just teaching them the Hegelian dialectic. The antithesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. And it's like, be real. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and that's all there is to it. And you get polarized in left and right. You're either a Democrat or Republican, you're either a feminist or you're MGTOW. You know what I mean? It gets ridiculous. Because we don't understand that you have to get to the core essence of the problem. You shouldn't have to be teaching your kids, like racism is wrong. Sexism is wrong. You know, you don't have to teach them that if you have adapted them to a culture and way of life that is integrated in its brain process. So if they understand the three core things, congregative, synthesis, analysis, if they understand that, there's no way they could come out thinking in terms of only external thoughts or thinking racist or thinking sexist. They can't think that way because you are isolating them in Auset culture that is adaptive to a way of life that has a whole brain thinking. This is what the ancient Kemetic people did, and that's why they were able to build pyramids and the Sphinx. You understand what I'm saying? So you don't have to say, don't be racist, don't bully, be tolerant. Why would you? You don't have to say those things, because during the meditation and the practicing of the mantra or the hakao or the words of power, it resonates and causes a frequency and a vibration that has them thinking a certain way so that they're on the right path of ma'at, truth, justice, balance. But we think in this Western world that to get somebody on the right path, you have to have good oratory skills. You have to verbally get into a discourse or to tell them what the right thing is to do. Ma'at says to understand truth, you have to live life. Live life meaning live life in a culture. Culture meaning that if you have two boys, the oldest boy must be given responsibilities and a little more privilege than the youngest boy. And his job is to take care of his younger brother. And he will then sit at a closer seat at the table to the head figure, the father. And then who does the father sit close to? The grandparents, and then the grandparents will sit close to a table where there's food prepared, but no one's sitting there because that is for the ancestors in the metaphysical realm, the ether. Paying tribute to the ancestors. Who comes after the ancestors? The gods. Who comes after the gods? Neter, the one, source, the one that's all. You see how this works, you know, and you don't eat unless you prepared a table for the ancestors who are no longer with us but watching over us. You don't have a house. You cannot have a house without a shrine to the ancestors. This is the culture you must teach your children. This is what Auset is all about. She's not about teaching Horus, through verbal dialogue. She's about indoctrinating him into a culture, a way of life, a way of acting that will instill ma'at, the great qualities. Let me go to this. Have you heard of Herodotus, the Greek historian? Herodotus, when he went to Egypt, the one thing he noticed, let me just get to this. He says, Herodotus, I got a couple of monitors going on here. He says, Herodotus, sometimes around the year 425 BC, the writer and geographer Herodotus published his magnum opus, a long account of the Greco-Persian wars that he called the histories. Okay, the histories. Now, in that, he was, I believe he was talking about his description of Egypt when he noticed that the Egyptians, which he noticed from eyewitness account, were black men and women. Says, according to most translations, Herodotus states that the Greek oracle was known to be from Egypt, and the oracle was a woman, okay, because you know oracle could be a physical tool or device, or it could be a person that goes into trance state, okay, to be known to be from Egypt because she was black, that the natives of the Nile region are black with heat, and the Egyptians were black skinned with woolly hair. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was that when Herodotus went to Egypt, he saw children playing in the streets naked. This is where we go back to the Garden of Eden, being naked, because African people had no shame of the body. There was no shame of the body because they saw past the physical. They weren't into congregative thinking. They were into synthesis. So they understood that you are not physical and the physical body is not shameful. So it perplexed Herodotus because, you know, Greek culture at that time was very into male body and, you know, having sex with young boys. So the children in Egypt ran freely naked, and there was no pedophiles, there's no serial killing. So this perplexed Herodotus. And what he didn't understand was through the culture that Egypt had, it rooted out that type of divergent behavior. It got to the core of that. So that behavior, you didn't have pedophiles walking around. That's why children were safe. When I was in priesthood, we were responsible for children. There's a beautiful young girl, very, very small, tiny girl, who I used to come pick her up and take care of her. And I would spend, I kid you not, maybe like 4 or 5 hours with her. I would never see her mother. And her mother would probably, after about 6 hours, come check on her, and she would see that the little girl was in my lap and we were playing, because the mother knew that the child was in a safe environment of culture and spirituality, that she didn't have to worry about her daughter, that her daughter was with people who had gone through initiation and trance state. And this is the other thing, that Auset symbolizes trance state, meditation, because that is the only way you can root out divergent behavior. You cannot get rid of negative behavior by verbally talking to someone and having them come to a certain epiphany and suddenly saying, oh, I just realized I've been doing wrong, I'll change. You can't, because if that person could change, there would be no drug addiction, people wouldn't be smoking cigarettes, people wouldn't be overweight. No, the right brain is the seat of the emotions, and it controls the left brain. So your responses that you have in life are automatic, coming from the right brain or the shadow self. This is where your addictions are. This is where your negative behaviors are. This is where your perverse fantasies are. But to rid yourself of that, you have got to meditate, go into the meditative state, the right brain, and then plant the seed, the Immaculate Conception from the Benu bird, plant the seed of a new behavior. And have and nurture that behavior, Auset, nurturing Haru for battle, and have that new behavior grow, take root and grow, and then you become who? Asar. You bring Asar back to the throne. This is the grand metaphor of the Asar Auset story. Because right now, your Set within you is ruling. Set is your animal nature, or what we call is Sahu. Sahu is the animal spirit that rules you right now. And I've said this time and time again, for these people in the conspiracy theory arena, these people in the occult or in spirituality don't know what the hell they're talking about, because they keep saying that if we eliminate and we attack the problem of the ruling elite, the oligarchy, if we get them out of the way, we will get the planet on the right direction. No, you won't. You won't. You only remove one villain to put in place another villain. Because if you don't spiritually uplift people, if there's no culture that can root out the negative behavior of the people, you'll only be placing one dictator with another dictator. So the first thing we have to do is not a coup d'etat where we take out the current established order, but the first thing we have to do is come up with a culture, a way of life that is light-giving, that it pays tribute to the gods and God, Netzer, the one source, and that gets us to check animal Sahu behavior. Because when you are an enlightened spiritual being, you don't pollute the earth or Gaia or Geb. You don't pollute the sky with chemtrails or a shoe and tefnut. You don't do that, because you understand all things are integrated. All things are one. All things work to support the entire whole. And without one component, it all falls down. This is how the ruling elite wants to kill off all people on the planet of melanated skin complexion, because they don't understand synthesis. They don't understand that all pieces form the whole. It is all one, that you can't have the whole without the individual components. No man is an island. All right? We don't understand that, because we as a people, all of us included, are sick. We're psychopaths. We are psychopaths because we have become indoctrinated and support and proselytize this sick way of life. I don't go up to people using terms and definitions saying, you're racist, you're feminist, you're sexist. Because those are erroneous definitions and terms. They're erroneous. Because when I meditate, I integrate my brain thinking to where I don't think that way. It's an impossibility for me to start thinking racist or sexist. Now, I can use those terms and say those things to facilitate a conversation with somebody. In the same way, I know that when I'm talking about myself, I will say the person, because I know that the physical body, the Geb aspect, the physicality of me is not who I really am. I am consciousness having a fourth dimensional experience or interaction with a hologram, so that Neter, God within me, can become more aware of his infinite potential and power. Now, with that said, as I said before, Auset is culture, Auset is trance state. Now, you have the power and the ability to change the reality around you. And the way to do that is to tap into the subconscious mind, because when you're planting that seed, it takes root and grows, and it aligns the physical environment. It aligns things through the process of synchronicity, which called Jung coined that term, so that you will have the things that you want. So if I have an objective of getting more money, if I have an objective of finding the right mate, if I sit down and use a set trance meditative state and seed myself with the proper objective, then I, who am connected to reality and all that there is, will work to align the physical things so that they come into contact with me and benefit me. So I'll meet the right person at the right time. I'll be at the right situation to benefit from things that may be happening, like opportunities. So how do we do that? So I'm going to give you a basic, really simple ritual that you can do on a daily basis that will work wonders. And for me, not all magic works. Magic is contextual, it's relational, meaning one woman, she could be using a magical spell and it works for her, but if I use it, it doesn't work for me, because our belief systems are different. Because your belief in something will make it happen. But we all have different belief systems, so you know, the spell may be powerful for her, but me, it may be hokey, and my belief system does not accept it. Therefore, it won't be seated in my subconscious mind. So, therefore, I will have to find something else that works for me. This is the same thing that you have when you're looking at subliminal tapes. You know, you're saying, well, why does subliminal tape work for somebody else on getting them to stop smoking, but it doesn't work for me? Because there are words in those subliminal tapes that don't resonate with you, that don't jive with your belief system. That's why the subliminal tape doesn't work. But doesn't mean that subliminal programming doesn't work. No, don't generalize that. It does work. It's just that this specific one doesn't work. Just like when I have consultations with people, I have no one-size-fits-all advice. I got to sit down with you and find out, how did you arrive at this belief system? Why is this belief system causing such a havoc in your life? I have to look back at how you were brought up, your archetypes in your life, like your mother, your father archetype, and get to the root of what's causing the issue and then prescribe something for you. But I can't just come along and say, take this herb or take this mantra and this meditation and then that should root it out. No, I got to find a lot of stuff out about you. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to perform this ritual morning when we get up and right before, 30 minutes before we go to bed. And you should do this for no longer than 10 minutes. Start by doing it for 5 minutes, then go to 10 minutes. So what you need to do is get a candle, and this is about 8 inches in length. So you want to get a candle like this long. And the reason why I've got a red candle, this is not Auset's color or Isis's color, but the red candle is for those, and you can Google red correspondences. Red is for more assertive business practices, and I'm using this one because I want to be more aggressive in business and negotiations, so I'm going to use red. Red is Heruku Huti. Red and purple is Heruku Huti, god Heruku Huti. Heruku Huti, if you don't know, is Ma'at says the law. If you violate the law, she sends Heruku Huti, god of war, to get you. Okay, so you take this candle, right? And you set yourself up a little table, altar with just a candle on. You don't need anything else, no herbs or nothing. And you want to light the candle, all right? And as such, and leave the candle. Where's Buddha? There you go. Okay. So leave the candle lit like that, right? And now I want you to do, this is kind of like scrying. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but this, don't worry about it. You're going to sit down and you're going to stare into the flame for 5 to 10 minutes. Try not to blink, but you will blink, okay? But so you blink, don't go freaking out. But you definitely will blink. So try not to blink, but stare into the candle. And when you stare into the candle, I want you to visualize, play a small movie in your head of you achieving the objective. Say, for example, if you see yourself finding the right mate, or see yourself getting the raise, or getting some money, or whatever it is that you want, getting that car that you want, getting that loan that you want. Now visualize that. Now the important thing is not so much the visualization, but it's the emotion behind the visual. Make sure that you're feeling it. That's what's important. You have to feel it, and that feeling has to be a positive emotion. All right. So keep replaying that and hold that image in your head, and the feeling is very important. And then when you're done, blow the candle out. Sometimes, some spiritualists advise you don't blow it out, but yes, you can blow it out, and you can say something like, I'm in Ra, and then go to work. Do the same thing at night, 30 minutes before you go to bed. And when you do it, blow the candle out and go directly to bed. Don't do anything else. Go right to bed, because that's going to transfer it from the left brain to the right brain. That's what you want to do. All right. And as I said before, you do it twice a day. When you wake up in the morning, the very first thing you wake up in the morning, you light the candle, sit there for 5 to 10 minutes, and you perform this. Now, the other way you can do it is and this is just as powerful, but this one is using words. Is that when you get up in the morning, you light the candle, you stare into the flame, and then you repeat to yourself in your mind the positive aspects that are the things you want. For example, if I'm rich, I can say, if I want to be rich, I can say, I'm enjoying a very rich lifestyle. I am wealthy. And I always want to say in the present. I don't want to say as a future thing, because if you say as a future thing, then your mind the subconscious mind doesn't work to make it happen, because it keeps thinking it's in the far future. But if you keep saying it as it's in the now, and you are feeling what it feels like to be wealthy, then the subconscious works to align things, synchronicity, to bring you the wealth that you're looking for. So, for example, if I want to root out, like say for example, I am a very agitated person. I fly off the handle. I get angry real quick. I can stare at the candle and say mentally that I am a peaceful person, that nothing sways me emotionally, that I'm always calm, cool, and collect. And I say it in my mind while staring at the flame. Now, the thing about this is it's very powerful, because when you're staring at that flame and you're focusing on the objective, you're burning that objective into the retina of the eye, going directly into the right brain. Now, the reason sometimes people perform magic and it doesn't work, because magic has to move from the left brain conscious waking state to the right brain subconscious state. And the right brain is the connection to the ether, the astral world, or whatever. And that is where things, the power of things happen, So for something to happen, it's got to move from left to right brain. And you should do this for, do it for 30 days. Oh, that's powerful. Do it for, well, actually not 30 days, 28 days. That's a moon cycle. And after that, forget it. Don't think about it again. Cast this off. Don't think about it. And what you'll find happens after a couple of weeks after that, you'll see it manifest. You'll see something startling happen, to where you may meet a venture capitalist, and he'll throw a bunch of money at you. You may meet a young woman or man who will just tickle your fancy. You two will get engaged, have children, and name them Kasank, something of that nature. But I've found this to work, and it could be very powerful. If you're doing this for the 28 days, and after you give it some time, you forget about it, throw it aside, and about 3 or 4 weeks later, it still doesn't work. Don't give up hope. Magic takes time. The more ambitious you go, the more time the spirit is going to take to align the forces to bring it to you. So it may take some time. For example, if I say I want a woman who is blonde, who is 6 feet tall, who works as an astronaut. Oh, I would love to be a woman who works as an astronaut. Sure, take me out of space. Well, anyway, well, that's going to take time for the universe to find that alternate reality and bring it to this reality of a woman who's tall, blonde, an astronaut, and who will fall in love with me. That's a lot to ask the universe. So that could take a year or two. It will happen, but it's going to take some time, So give it time. If you give up on it and you say, forget it, then that's maybe when it will start to manifest. or maybe you didn't want it. And that's another key to this to keep in mind, is that what you're asking is an intelligence to work on bringing this to you. So don't ask for something trivial. Ask for something that is a genuine need that you have. And yes, a mate can be a genuine need. We all need to be with somebody who's loving and caring and compliments us. So it's okay to ask for that. It's okay to ask for money, because you should live a life where all your bills are met. But you should be asking, I want to be a billionaire. I want to be a trillionaire. Well, it's not going to happen, because the spirit knows. It says, well, that's really an excess, and you don't need all that money. Therefore, I'm not going to work to bring it to you. You know what I mean? But if you're talking about, I need this money to send my kids to college or put food on the table, and that's a genuine need in you, and it's going to resonate with your spirit, and your spirit is going to work to make it happen. See, and remember, magic, especially this Auset ritual, works. It does work. If it's not working, then you didn't do something along the way. You know what I mean? And, people always talk about, oh, that occult stuff don't work. Oh, I tried, it doesn't work, because what you asked for was not a genuine need. You asked for something that was greedy, that was selfish. And all magic has a ma'at factor. Ma'at means truth, justice, that God will not give you something that's going to violate universal law. Meaning God's not going to give you the planet Jupiter, because Jupiter belongs to its own energy and its own source, and it has a function that it serves, which is to attract the meteors and asteroids so they won't hit Earth. And it's a big planet. It's doing its job, has a big radiation field, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's not going to give you Jupiter. You know what I mean? So you have to think about that all things work to support the whole and support harmony and justice. So don't ask for something that's going to deprive someone else, or that's against the law, universal law, meaning that, say, he has a very pretty girlfriend. I want her. I'm going to do a ritual to make her fall in love. No. That's the wrong thing to do, because it may work that she falls in love with you, but your relationship will be hell on earth. And that's the karma coming back to get you. So anyway, let me just sum up what I was saying. Very powerful Auset ritual. Please practice it. Remember, I said there's two ways of doing it. One through the visualization of seeing your objective. The other one is stating your objective in your mind with the words. Hear yourself repeating and stating these things. Both work. Both are very effective, because you're staring into that flame, which is going to hurt your eyes a little bit, but it's burning it into the retina, and it's going to get you to hyper focus. Haru is focus, the will, the hyper focus on the objective, and your spirit has no choice but to submit to your will, or do what your bidding is, right? And Auset, the mother archetype, stands for culture. We must understand that to live, to understand truth, we have to live life, meaning that to get us to act as God men and God women, we don't need to go to a sermon or hear a minister give us a verbal discourse. We need to engage in a practice, a culture which reinstills the right behavior to us every day. Reinstill it. And that's things like making sure that the children understand their roles and responsibilities and performs those, making sure that your house is up in a certain way where you have a shrine space for the ancestors, and that you're actively communicating with the spirit, you're consulting the oracle on the right things to do. And this way, you don't have to come up with things like civil rights or things like tolerance or Black Lives Matter. You don't have to come up with those things, because when you're doing those things from a spiritual perspective, it automatically instills the right behavior in your subconscious mind through the repetitiveness of the ritual. Do you understand what I mean? That happens. So I don't need to go to a minister to ask for something. I do my Auset ritual, and it attracts the things to me through partly law of attraction. Yes, I don't need to go to a minister and ask him to do something to help me to achieve that. Like, for example, I don't have to ask the minister, could you give me and my mate a consultation because we're having some fighting and dispute? No, I don't need him. I just meditate and seeing us do better, and that happens. He is not necessary. He is not a factor in this equation, and was only put there so that he can get some money from you and to look good in his suit and possibly sleep with your wife. And yes, that's what these ministers are doing. They're targeting women and having these affairs, and it's all scandal. You can see this, and sleeping with young boys, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, so, you know, when you understand this, then you understand there's nothing that you should be doing for fighting for women's rights. There should be no feminism. There should be no like civil rights. There should be no, you know, thing that says, anti-Semitism or, you know, you're sexist, because the Egyptians didn't practice matriarchy. They didn't practice patriarchy. They practiced cosmological, the order of the universe. And in cosmologics, it tells us that there is a place for everything, and everything has its place according to a value system. If you look at the Portnet Teru, the Patreon, or the company of the gods that the Egyptians created, the tree of life, you'll see that Auset is under Haru, and Haru is under Oser, because they all have that order and that value system. There's a value system because it comes trans, Auset, Haru will, gives birth to Osar, that the God man or God woman who you're supposed to be. You understand? And then as you go up the pantheon, you'll have, like, for example, you have a set of Isis. Her sister is Nebhet. And then you keep going, and Nebhet is very similar to Heteru or Hathor. And then you have Sebek or Anubis. You have Ma'at and her husband Tehuti. Then you have Sekert. She's the grand witch, grand priestess. Then you have Rukhudi, god of war. And then you have all the other gods. You have Nekabet, Wajet, you have Geb, Shu, Tefnut. It goes on and on and on. You know, one of my favorites is Basset. I love her. But anyway, so this is a little bit about performing Auset magic. Very, very powerful. Auset Isis. You know, not the terrorist group. You know, but the goddess. And the last thing I want to say before I let you go is that these gods and goddesses are real. Too many times I see these spiritual teachers refer to them as just like, oh, they're just metaphysical principles or energies. No, they are real. They are intelligent. You can communicate with them and they will communicate back to you. You understand? If you don't believe that they're real, then you're doomed. It's over, because the magic won't work for you. You can't placate yourself to a god and pretend that they're real. You have to believe it. That's part of what I was saying. And having the magic work, you have to believe it. So if you're playing spirituality and you want to say, oh, these are just mythos or metaphysical concepts, so then forget it. You're just engaging in Western way of thinking, which is left brain, as to intellectually overanalyze something and get into mental and masturbation just to seem intelligent. But Ma'at is about living the truth. It's not about a secular practice where you're just saying, oh, I'll be spiritual on a Sunday, and the rest of the week I can do whatever I want. Anyway, folks, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you want more videos like this, subscribe to my channel here on YouTube. And also sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get some more information on spirituality and living your life and finding out what's going on in this great fourth dimensional realm we live in. So until next time, this is Kasak Ma Keperu. I'm in Ra.